So first of all, do you just want to explain who you are and what the British Business Bank is?
Yeah, cool. So I'm Keith Morgan and I'm the Chief Executive of the British Business Bank. And we've been going for about a year. So we were set up under the last government, but became live as an independent institution, but 100% owned by the government in November of 2014. Now, what do we do? I mean, we were set up to change the way in which the small business market works. So to encourage both more finance for small businesses where they can't secure that finance by other routes, but also important things such as creating more choice, more diversity. We firmly believe that choice and diversity are very important to make the markets work better. And finally, we think that there is a key issue in making sure that small businesses have got the right level and content, the right information available to them to make the choices. So there's a demand side to this from our point of view, as well as a supply side. I mean, the final thing I'd say is that the British Business Bank is a financial institution. It's an economic development bank. So we invest our money and we earn a return. So what we have pledged to do is to cover all of our costs and earn 2%, which is essentially the cost of the money that's used to fund us. So all of the benefits of the British Business Bank, we like to think of that as being free from the taxpayer's point of view.
Now I remember, because I've written about this space for ages, and when the business bank was talked about, businesses were like, what are we going to get? What is it, a bank on the high street? Is it like taking on Barclays? How are you? I know it's still early days, but how do you feel about how the message has got out there? Because do you think there is still some confusion amongst small businesses about what the bank actually is?
Well, I think we're being clear about how we operate, and that is that we don't lend directly to small businesses. And that means that we work through the marketplace, which has got a huge number of advantages to it. We work with over 80 different partners in the marketplace. It ranges from people who provide startup finance. It goes through people who might be angel investors or venture capital investors, banks, asset finance companies. As I say, 80 or more in total. That gives us huge reach. It also means it's very efficient. We use the skills of those people to reach out to the pieces of the market that we feel we should focus on. And by doing that, we also leverage our impact, because when we do work through the market, then our money is put together with private sector money. And so we can multiply our impact by working in this way. So as a model, that seems to be a very effective and a very efficient way of doing it.
So in a way then, are you not sort of concerned in a way about the brand of the business bank? It's more about that the money gets to the small businesses that need it in a way. Is that sort of how you measure it? So like, how would you measure awareness?
Yeah, I mean, brand is important, but obviously the objective itself is important. Brand is a means to that objective. We believe we can have our impact in the marketplace through partners. We also think it's important, though, that people understand that the finance is coming through the British Business Bank, because we connect with small businesses in other ways. So we have recently, and I think quite successfully last year, launched an initiative to develop more information that's available for small businesses. This is the Business Finance Guide. This is branded the British Business Bank. It's actually co-branded with the Institute for Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, ICAW, and it brings together also 17 other different partners across the whole industry of the small business sector. And in that way, we want to get our information, our branded information people know they can trust because it's from the British Business Bank, out through to small businesses. And we're doing that through those partnerships. We're doing it through the BBA, we're doing it through the big banks, so that information can get to small businesses at the point at which they need to make choices.
I mean, banks, traditional banks, don't have the best reputation, or you'd probably say maybe it's getting better. You come from a banking background. What did you learn from that sort of experience about the way banks are set up to deal with? I mean, our audits specifically are very, very small businesses, so we're not really SMEs. We're, the vast majority of our audience have less than 5 staff. Some have none. They're working from home. So, what did your experience teach you about how banks are set up to deal with people like that?
So, I mean, banks have a very important role to play in the marketplace. They do play an important role. We know that we've got 4 or 5 very large banks who have got a very large market share of the lending market. Small businesses rightly will turn to their banks, their high street banks, to search for assistance and for help. I think we believe it's important that at the point at which the bank cannot provide the assistance, then those small businesses are given the option of other alternatives, other information that helps them do that. And we've been working very, very hard to make that happen. I'll give you an example of this. And what we know from speaking to small businesses is that a large proportion of them go straight to the bank. We know that if they don't get what they need from the bank, then a large proportion of them, something like a third, just go straight back to their business and they don't do anything else. And clearly what needs to occur is there needs to be, at that moment, there needs to be more choice. So one of the things that we're working with government on is a new referral scheme. This is something where the legislation's already gone through, so the large banks will be required to offer small businesses options of referrals, and referrals to what we're calling finance platforms. Think of these as being platforms that will match together potential demand and potential supply. People who want to borrow or need investment, and funders, alternative funders, a full range of funders who can provide it. So we're currently working through a process of getting information from people who want to be those finance platforms and going through a designation process, which will mean that government will finally allow a number of these platforms to operate and to receive the referrals from the big banks. So I think there's a way in which we can change the structure of the marketplace to complement what is there through the big banks, to give more profile to the range of alternative providers that already exist. Because if you look across the industry, then there is a wide range of options. There are asset finance providers who can provide finance for purchasing new machinery, new productive capacity. There's a growing number of alternative finance providers, people who are using the technology platforms to make their business more efficient, peer-to-peer platforms, invoice discounting platforms. You've got people who are providing dedicated funds to provide debt, non-bank lenders, and all of these things are growing in the marketplace at quite some speed. What we want to do is to give more life to that and to create an environment in which there are alternatives to what people know best.
Have you got any examples of some small businesses that you like, that you've worked with? I'm sure you like them all, but that you think have been particularly savvy with how they've accessed and used finance?
Yeah. So let me focus on businesses which have used some of the alternative sources of finance. Obviously, a large number of businesses do get their finance through banks, and we actually work through the banks to make that happen as well. But we think of our small business marketplace in 3 different groups. One is startups, so companies that wish to start up for the first time, secure funds to be their own boss. We think, and increasingly we're focusing on scale up, because there is a group of companies who may have very strong growth ambitions, and in that situation they need finance that could be viewed to be more risky than traditional banking finance. So then you've got a segment which we call staying ahead, where people just want to get the required investment and funding for their firms to be successful in their own marketplaces. If I take a couple of examples there, one great example of startup is is where we work through the Startup Loans Company. So we provide and manage the funding for the Startup Loans Company. It provides somewhere between £5,000 and £25,000 of debt for a brand new business. A second example would be a company, a technology company. It's a company that's got huge growth potential, and there it might need significant investment, but that's going to be quite high risk equity that goes in. And we play an important role in creating venture capital funds that will invest in those areas. And a good one, I think, is a company called Oxford Biotherapeutics, based in Abingdon, just outside Oxford. The whole focus of this company is on developing clinical solutions, immunotherapy for cancer. In fact, we've read about this quite recently in the newspapers, and we have a company that's making great strides in this area here in the UK. Oxford Biotherapeutics now works through and has partnerships with a large number of other pharmaceutical companies, and has expanded from Abingdon into the US as well. And they found their finance by going through one of our enterprise capital funds, so seeking out people who are prepared to invest in what might be seen to be a more uncertain, more risky, but high potential payout situation. Final example perhaps of just someone who is trying to secure the funds they need to keep their business moving forward would be people who use alternative finance. Now, one of our partners is Funding Circle, so we support Funding Circle by lending some of our money through their platform. A company called Bramley Engage is engaged in the manufacture of gin and fruit liqueurs, and that company quite recently secured a £25,000 loan through Funding Circle to build or to purchase a new gin still, to increase its productive capacity and to bring on stream a new product. And that's where they found great convenience, great efficacy from going to an alternative finance provider such as Funding Circle and securing the funds very quickly. So those are just three examples of where we've played a role and where I think companies have searched beyond the traditional sources of finance.